it's very difficult to be present. I mean, it takes effort, right? And it's not it's not something that you can just necessarily have an affinity for immediately. It takes practice. So I think, another big theme of all this is it's not just going to be you're here now and you're going to get to here immediately. But I think that being present is something that can help you in your life, but it can also help you with doing social media better and doing visuals better. Okay, so I can't provide you with a solution to every problem you will face in social media, but I want to give you a framework for understanding and tackling the challenges related to it. So what does that mean? Okay, so there's a thing called a narrative, right? And in short, a narrative is a person wants something and is willing to overcome obstacles to get that thing. This is pretty much, when you break down every Disney movie, when you break down, pretty much, not only every film, but when you break down like how you tell stories, like just you're having a conversation with a friend or something, this is, I would say, 98% of the way that we tell stories. And so that to me is the idea of the narrative, the conceit of the narrative, is the way that we can communicate with everyone in the world. You don't need it. You don't need necessarily. You need a language to be the medium for that narrative, but the idea of narrative is something that is universal. So let me provide an example. So, does anyone know what these are? Does someone want to try? Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Is that it looks like a rock and then paintings, ancient paintings on a rock wall?
That's right. So these are paintings from 40,000 years ago in a cave in Spain. So we're talking, and so the reason why I'm showing you this picture is because the idea of the narrative is old. It is really old. The stories that are being told right here are not the stories that we're telling today, but the idea that a person wants something and is willing to overcome something to get it is something that is a concept that has been around for a very long time. So I think that this is a concept that's very necessary to understand when thinking about media in general and how to effectively use it. Okay, so I'm just going to show the whole thing because it's important. It's 10 minutes, but it's a great 10 minutes. How many of you have seen Up? Okay, who remembers the first montage? All right, that's why we're going to watch it. All right. So when you watch this, I just want you to think about the way that this is a narrative. Okay, your life is a narrative. I have a question for you. It's a rhetorical question, but something that you should think about. What do you want to say in your life? What do you want your life story to say? And then the follow-up question is, how do you communicate that? And if someone made a movie about your life, how would critics review it? So I think it's really important, and I want to just take a quick couple minutes with Up here. So there were a lot of things that the Up movie did that were cinematic. Obviously, the girl meeting the guy in the clubhouse, and that quickly they become friends. I mean, there are things that are sort of testing our belief here. But at the end of the day, those sort of devices are actually happening in real life in a lot of ways. The way that we remember our lives is much more like that movie than it actually happens. We don't remember a lot of the monotony in it, and that's really important because the bigger things are the things that are important. The little things aren't. So these are the guiding principles. And this is the follow-up. And this is really this second part's really important. What what that guy went through in the movie is his narrative arc. Even though he didn't get at that point in his narrative, although he didn't get to Paradise Falls, he had still gone through a narrative, and that's the same thing with us. We may never achieve what we want to set out to achieve, but wherever we go, there's good stuff along that path too. Okay, so you're like, all right, how does this relate? How should I use Facebook? How should I use Tumblr, Twitter, and Instagram? I'm going to focus on those 4, but I mean, this relates to all social media. My thesis is that you should use your use of social media is most effective when you use it in a way that reflects your life narrative. So, and it goes back to being present. That's why this is here on every slide. It goes back to being present, authentic, intentional, and reflective. So, if you're interested in, let's say, politics, the way that you should use your social media should reflect your interest in politics. And the more that you form your life narrative and understand what you want to do in your life, those things are the things that should guide you in the way that you use social media. So, and that your use of social media can assist you in pursuit of achieving the goals of your life narrative. So, what that means, the way to operationalize what that means is, one is community. One way that you can sort of use social media in a way that can get you closer to achieving your life goals is through creating a community. If you can, on your social media, be a place that is a community where people will come to you or your Facebook page or whatever, a Facebook page or Twitter page, but as long as you're creating a space on the internet where people are going to feel fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes and interests and goals, you're very well on your way to getting people to identify with you, and you're well on your way to sort of creating this sort of social currency that will allow you to interact with people in a way that will help you further your life goals. And to me, this is really key. Creating community is about giving as much as it is about receiving. And that to me is about what the authenticity part of it is. You're not creating this community and you're not using social media solely because you want to gain something out of it. And if you are, that's gonna show in the way that you use social media. But if you're actively seeking to create a community because you know it will be good for all the parties concerned, that authenticity and that doing it in a way that will help everyone as opposed to solely benefiting you is something that people will say, hey, this is a good idea. So the way that you foster community, so you can foster experts, practitioners, academics, whatever field you're talking about, I think commenting on things when done in an intellectual way and not in the internet troll way, I'm sure we've all met our fair share of internet trolls, is really good. I don't think that negativity is good on the internet generally, because whatever you're bad mouthing, whenever you have negativity, you are doing that on something or somebody, and that party is going to be probably not happy that you're being negative. So just don't go there. I mean, I think commenting should mostly be for positive things. And go ahead.
How do you go about challenging people with their, a lot of people have assumptions and so you want to, how do you go about?
So I think commenting is when done with authenticity, just saying I have a genuine interest in this, and this is my point of view. But being collegial and really thinking about, why am I trying to comment on this? Am I really trying to change this person's point of view? Is that your goal? How do you see, what are you trying to gain out of this comment? You know what I'm saying? Because I think that far too many people are trying to change beliefs by commenting, and I think that that's probably just not going to work. You know, I just don't think that people's beliefs are so fungible that if you say an argument that makes a lot of sense, they might be like, oh, you know what, you're 100% right, I'm going to change my opinion. But I think that dialogue is healthy as long as it's held in an intellectual way. I think asking questions, you know, is probably the biggest thing that the biggest one that in this list that I like to do, is because you really can sort of, if you are genuinely interested in something and you ask a question, people will acknowledge your authenticity and be a lot more likely to answer it. You know, I just think that consuming more than putting out is really important. And so what that means is, it's not that you can't tweet or you can't post, but sharing other people's work and sort of creating a space where there's value in coming to you because you're sort of kind of being an editor and you're kind of culling content that is within your interest is going to be a way that you can sort of help others learn about those things that they're also interested in. Does that make sense? So I think sharing, reading, commenting, asking questions, less you and more everything else. Yeah, go ahead.
How would you comment on subjects that are already really controversial, somewhat, have negative connotations such as like poverty, race, education? Like everyone has kind of like an entrenched view, their own view of that. How would you suggest commenting on those subjects in like a public arena without, using the same views you just expressed, like genuineness?
I want to try and understand better what you're asking. Are you saying that you're trying to comment on those issues without doing it in a way that's going to
offend or incite or aggravate or agitate? Is it even possible?
Well,
Because those subjects are so.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is going to be a certain segment of the population that is going to have an adverse reaction to, there's probably 5 topics that you can't talk about, that a certain segment of the population is just going to say things that are reactionary. And I'm not saying that as on the left or the right. I'm just saying that there are certain topics that sort of have they have connotations, right? But just because that segment of the population is going to have an adverse reaction doesn't mean that we shouldn't talk about them. And again, to me, it goes back to, if that's what you're authentically interested in, then that's what you're going to do. Because even if it's something where you're going to have to deal with people sort of trying to sabotage you or trying to troll you, like if that's what you're authentically interested in, then that's going to drive you more to do that. Go ahead.
I also think that this goes back to the whole point of what social media is all about. I mean, if somebody has views that aren't similar to yours, the way that they get those views is because they were raised in a very small bubble of being. And social media allows people from this small bubble to reach with that small bubble all the way over there. So if the views are completely different, this is your way of connecting and not necessarily changing views, but letting other people know that other views exist. And through that is the only way that your message is going to be heard. Whether it's accepted is another thing, but this is your way of getting it heard.
To add on to that, in regards to your question, I would say that, again, the being present is really important. So, maybe this person is trolling you and you say, hey, I'd love to have a face-to-face meeting with you and actually talk some of these issues out. And then that way, you're sort of actually taking your social media interaction, and I'm going to talk about this more later, and turning it into a face-to-face interaction. And then when you can create sort of a actual connection that's physical, it's much harder to have such a sort of staunch disagreement on something. So I think that is really important when you're sort of talking about these issues. And you can also be present on the internet. Being present when you're talking with somebody just doesn't. It's not only when you're in person. You can be present when responding to somebody who has a negative comment. You can really sort of say, I'm trying to understand what your point of view is, and I'm trying to respond to it in a sort of non-emotional, but just breaking down the logic here. And I'd love it if you could do the same. So the thing is, you can be present and authentic and intentional, but that doesn't mean the person who's coming to your community is going to do the same. So that's something that in a lot of ways is out of your control, but to me, I think the thing is, as long as you have a genuine interest in whatever you're talking about or whatever you're using social media for, you have to acknowledge that there are going to be some people who are going to try and be against that. But for the most part, if Joe Biden, he spoke at Strom Thurmond's funeral. He gave the eulogy for it because Strom Thurmond asked him to do it. Did they agree on a lot of issues? No. But did they respect each other? Yes. And so, I think at the end of the day, it's about creating respect even if there is disagreement. And I think that comes from these 4 things at the bottom. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
We're at the Institute of Politics. So I thought most people, professionals who are in politics, look at social media as a way of attracting a large following, which I guess is through Twitter. Yeah, it doesn't seem like they're doing any of this. So is this, and then there are other people who use social media, I understand, for what the name says, social.
Yeah.
So it seems like the world is divided into people who do this professionally, like Blanquette, who's one of the fellows here. I think she said she might have 500,000 followers. She introduced us to somebody who had 1 million followers. So they're not trying to do any of this, I don't think.
So I don't mean to cut you off, but do you have a question?
Well, I just wonder, I thought this program was going to be about learning how to use Twitter and Facebook and the others that you mentioned as a means of doing what these politicians do. Because it is the Institute of Politics. This has nothing
to do with politicians.
Oh.
This has to do with just using social media. This is just about generally, the way I think it are some best practices of social media.
But do most people who aren't politicians use it in the way you're talking about, or just is this your recommendation?
These are my best practices. I haven't taken a poll, but I think that at the end of the day, there has to be substance behind whatever you're doing, and I think that this is the way to kind of have a substance behind what you're doing. So a few more things on this. Back to what you said. Digital interactions should lead to physical interactions. So say you're a student and say you're really interested in, I don't know, let's just say you're a student here, but you're from Hawaii and you are really interested in local politics. There is somebody from your district who has a press person, and they're probably on Twitter, and I bet you that they would talk to you. If you just interacted with them and said, hey, I'm really interested in this, I would love to chat with you. I'm a student here, I'm studying politics, and when I'm back from spring break or over summer break, I'd love to talk with you. It's really funny how many people who will say yes to something like that if you actually show genuine interest in what they're doing. I would say, you're not going to get Obama to meet you because you said, hey, can we meet on Twitter? But the people who are around these people who are not in the public spotlight and don't have 1 million followers probably will. And at the end of the day, if they don't get back to you or they say no, you haven't lost anything. As long as you do it with respect and as long as you do it with authenticity, you're not going to have a problem. I think that's the thing. Being afraid of getting told no, just don't worry about it. It's going to happen. You're not everyone is going to say yes, but if you don't ask anyone, what do you? You're not maximizing the potential that this medium has. I would say that at the end of the day, your connections that you make in person are phenomenally more important than the connections that you make on the internet. But you can start those connections that you make in person can start on the internet. How'd you meet? Well, I knew this person on Twitter and I reached out to them and we met up. That's becoming more and more common. So just keep that in mind. or you could, I mean, I say Twitter is probably the easiest one, but it works on Tumblr, it works on Instagram too. You know, you can, everyone has a website now, everyone has an email now. You can get in touch with anyone pretty much. And for the most part, unless people are really, really busy and you show some authenticity and interest in what they're doing, they'll probably get in touch with you. And then this is the biggest thing. This can probably get to answering your question.
I'm not on any of those things except internet.
Okay.
Well, and I don't. I was just out in San Francisco. Met with a cousin, her son, very big in Silicon Valley. We call him the billionaire. He's got like 30,000 shares of Netflix and other things, which he got into early. His MBA here.
So I'm also sorry to interrupt, but I just want to. Do you have a question?
Yes. Now, what does that say about me? I do everything on the internet. And perhaps I don't want to be authentic. I've nurtured this relationship out there for the younger generations, nieces and nephews. And so that that's kind of my, I don't know if that's authentic or not. And I communicate things that I think will nurture that relationship.
Okay.
Whether they're necessarily authentic or not. You're a lot younger. Older people may not want to be totally authentic all the time. They may want to pose.
All right. So I'm trying to understand what the question is. I'm not.
Well, what does that say about the older generation that may not be on the social media? I'm going to Anna Marie Cox to kind of find out, and it's
What does what say about the older generation? I'm not sure I understand.
we're not being on all this social media.
Well, that's fine.
Facebook,
I mean, that's their choice.
Twitter.
You know, if you don't want to be
Do I
on,
need to be on that?
do you need to? I mean, I think that's a personal choice. I mean, I don't have any.
Above and beyond just a simple email.
Yeah.
I only have
Do I
one of
need
them.
to be on that
Fine.
stuff?
Do you, I don't. I mean, I think that these things are applicable in real life as they are on the internet. So I'm just talking about how that you can apply being present, authentic, intentional, and reflective on the internet and on social media. But I think these are overall just good life practices too. So I mean, I think that you can use them in whatever way. I think these are just best practices that you can use in whatever way you think is best. But I'm speaking mostly from the social media front because that is what I was asked to speak about today. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But I'm just trying to raise some issues.
Sure. This sounds like a conversation that we could have offline after because it's not necessarily related to what I'm talking about today. But
Okay.
I'm happy to talk with you more.
All right.
Cool. So this is really important. I just know too many people, and I'm sure you've seen this on Instagram, where people will be like, "Hey, can I get a shout out?" or "Hey, follow me." It doesn't work, and if it does, there's no substance behind it, you know. And so to me, at the end of the day, you know, some people have a lot of Twitter followers or Instagram followers, or just followers on whatever social medium because they're famous. Some have it because they're actually creating community and they're actually providing information that's relevant and important to people. And unless you guys are going to get famous, but you still want to have a lot of followers, the latter is the category that you need to be in. So be someone who is a resource for others and is creating community, is providing information, and is generally, when you see content from that person, you know that person is going to try and give you their best take on whatever's going on in that subject area. I think being more specific is better. You know, I think that sometimes we tend to try and be Jacks and Jills of all trades in terms of topic interests, you know. So on an even more tangible level, you know, when I think about like a Twitter description or an Instagram description, you know, what I want to know is, who are you? it'll say where you live because it'll ask you that, but who are you? What is your current job title? And what are you interested in? So for me, I'm a multimedia producer at UCHI Politics, tweeting about visuals, politics, and sports. So that's fairly broad, but I mean, I'm not out here seeking to get a lot of followers necessarily. That's not why I'm trying to do this, but I mean, if you come to my page, you'll see immediately what I'm about. And so make it easy for people to know, is this person someone that I should follow or someone I shouldn't follow, you know? But just please don't say, can I get a shout out or follow me, because it just doesn't work. At least not in the long run. You know, that's all I'll say about that. Okay, so say you're trying to get a job doing social media and you're not like doing personal social media, right? The framework remains, but your company's narrative should replace your narrative. So as opposed to trying to figure out, okay, how do I be present? How do I be authentic on social media? Now it's like, what is your company trying to do? What is your company trying to say? And then taking those principles and applying them to social media. Does that make sense? Okay, so, for example, the IOP. The Institute of Politics at the University of Chicago is an extracurricular program designed to ignite in young people a passion for politics and public service. So, when we use social media, as crazy as this might seem, when I tweet or when I Instagram or when I post on Facebook, I'm thinking about this mission every time. Now, I mean, am I saying like, okay, really, how does this fit into our mission? But sometimes yes, but overall, I really want to make sure that young people and then passion for politics and public service, I really want every post that I make, everything that I do on social media to reflect this. And that is, by building that consistency, people will see that. Consistency is important. And that's really it. Okay, I just had to say this mostly to the young people. I mean, for the undergrads, I was where you were not that long ago. A lot of people ask me if I'm a current student, and I love that because it means I'm young, or it means I look young. But just really enjoy wherever you're going. You might not get to exactly where you thought you were going, but the journey is really what's important. And then I have to thank these people because these people have really impacted sort of the things that I said today. And if you're more interested in this idea of life narrative and how your narrative impacts, Donald Miller wrote a really great book called A Million Miles in 1,000 Years. Oh, shoot. And it really opened my eyes to how much you're in control of your narrative. And that's all I'll say about that. Okay, it's 11 o'clock. It's 11:04. Let's take a 10-minute. Well, let's have a 10-minute Q&A, and then we'll take a 10-minute break. Questions? Go for it.
I don't know if it would be better at this point or perhaps later to talk about specific strategies on like consolidating your social media efforts in one medium or strategies for specific medium.
Okay, so yeah, go for
like
it.
Specific strategy. So I'm a public policy student.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in anti-hunger work, and I'm now trying to find a job.
Right.
So I would like to start creating this social media reputation, but it's a little daunting. So do you recommend like specializing in Twitter, specializing in Facebook, but how to kind of maximize your bandwidth?
Sure. So personally, I think that Facebook is personal, and I think that Twitter is professional, broadly speaking. I don't tweet about, I don't Facebook about what I eat for breakfast, but I wouldn't tweet about that either. Yeah, and this is a great time to ask these sort of questions because I just want to give you the framework, and then your specific questions or challenges that you're seeing, I want to help you answer that using this framework that we just talked about. So in regards to your question, I would say that Twitter is probably the biggest way that you can the most effective way to sort of build that profile. So in your description, your profile, you can talk about you. I mean, you could say looking for a job in, what would be the
Food security.
food security. You could say that, and do you have a web domain?
No.
Do you have a blog?
No, but I have a list of articles from my
Okay.
Harris
I would say get a $10 domain name. That's your name. Get a WordPress blog, attach that custom domain name, put that in your Twitter description, and then you can start to build. When people Google you and your website's the first thing, you want to be in control of what people see. So if there's a whole lot of mumbo jumbo that's not your name up first, yourname.com, that might be sending mixed messages. So, but when it comes back to Twitter, I would say, put that in your profile. What are you specifically looking to gain? There's nothing wrong with being open about that. I mean, you're a student and you're looking for a job. Like that, you know what I'm saying? Like I don't think anyone's going to be like, oh, she shouldn't be saying on Twitter that she's looking for a job. But then what I would say is, so all right, you're on Twitter, right? You have your profile, you've set it up so that people know you're looking for a job. I would say, I'm just looking at your shirt, buy local. That's food security, right? I would you don't have to keep it like super, super professional in this. Let me rephrase that. You can keep it light. You don't have to keep it like very serious. I'm going to tweet serious things. Like you could just tweet a picture of your shirt and be like, rocking the, right. You know what I'm saying? Like, that I want to get to know who you are as a person as much as I want to get to know like what your interests are in terms of like, career-wise, you know what I'm saying? So, again, I would say this fits under the be authentic category. You're not trying to do anything that would transgress who you are as a person, but you're also choosing to be intentional about what you're showing people on social media. Does that make sense? Does that answer your question?
Yes.
So I would say Twitter first.
Twitter first.
But seriously, building a website is not. If you don't have a website, it's like, why not? A domain name's $10 a year, and you can get a free WordPress site, and that'll be plenty.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? It's not, and if that gets you a job, what's the cost benefit return on that?
Large.
4,000 to 1, 10,000. I don't even know. I don't know what the money is, but you know what I'm saying. So, okay, is that good?
Absolutely.
All right.
Yes.
If you're gonna do another session on practical things like that, what's the best domain to use for this purpose of that?
I'm taking questions right now. That's what I'm doing.
Well, that's my question, but.
Okay. So am I going to do it? I'm going to go to visuals after this.
Okay.
So
I'm just suggesting maybe you ought to do another session on a lot of the nuts and bolts of social media.
Okay. Noted. Sorry, I'll go to you and then I'll come to you. Go ahead.
Hey, okay, so kind of like a short background. So I'm a staff member at the university. I'm the youngest person in my department, so the social media stuff has just
Welcome.
been jumped
Oh,
on.
I'm close, but I got you.
And so I'm really interested. I totally 100% agree with the don't ever ask people to follow you, but I'm wondering if you can suggest how do I let all of my student employees know that this social media stuff is going on?
Sure. Well,
one just walked in.
I think no. I think it's a really great question. I think that there are a few ways to do this. Okay, so what's your department?
At the neighborhood schools program.
Okay, so do you have events?
Yeah.
Okay, so at every event, I would say your Twitter handle. I would say you can follow along on Twitter for more information. Follow us on Twitter or Facebook or whatever.
Okay.
So then you already have that face-to-face interaction, right?
Yeah.
You've already started
all
that.
The time.
Right. So then tell them, let's continue this conversation online.
Okay.
Right?
Cool.
And then in that way you can sort of say, and then here's where the content here's where content can come in. You can say, let's recap, let's have a dialogue about this event, right?
Okay.
And then you can have a discussion board that you sort of create for this specific event, and you say post it on Twitter and post it on your whatever social media you have, and say, hey, we're going to have a discussion board sort of talk about what just transpired yesterday. You know, if you have any thoughts, we'd love to hear them. Give us some feedback.
Okay.
You know.
Yeah. That's really helpful.
And I would also say do you have like email constituents?
Yeah.
So I would say, and you email them with some regularity?
Yeah.
So then what I would say is I would just include your, in an email one time, like, hey, we're doing a push on social media, we're really going to be
Okay.
active. Like, if you're interested in following
yeah.
us, I mean, if you're interested in learning more about us, please follow us.
Okay.
So it's sort of saying, this is what we're about. If you're interested in this, please follow us because we think that we're a source of information on this.
Yeah, because it's really interesting to hear you talk about like building community online because I already have the community.
Yeah, well, yeah.
So I feel like I should be able to.
Well, so if you already have the community and you're
Yeah.
trying to get them online, so
They just need to
do you think
know.
that there are barriers specifically to the community getting online?
No,
Like,
I'm just not sure how to sell it. But
Yeah.
with kind of the tips you've given me, I have a lot.
I honestly, it's really I mean, it sounds so simple, but being authentic with people and saying, hey, look,
Yeah.
this has been a great conversation, and I'd love to continue it with you. I can't stay at this event any longer because we have to go back or whatever. But
Right.
or just let's stay in touch.
Okay.
The best way to do that would be by following us on Twitter.
Okay, and
You
you
know
think Twitter is really the best platform?
Well, I'm just saying that because I think that right now I think that there are certain things that Facebook's doing in terms of trying to gain revenue that is making them a
Okay.
little bit less attractive right now. So I'm saying
Okay.
Twitter, but I mean, whatever social media
Yeah,
you want to
I'm using
use.
both.
Yeah, so I mean, you can say it on both. I mean,
Okay.
I think what's really great about Twitter though is it's much more easily, you can much more easily go from Twitter to Facebook than Facebook to Twitter.
Yeah, that's
Right?
what I've been discovering
Yes.
already.
Yeah. So I would say that if you are going to try and focus on one, Twitter would be the one.
Thank you, Priscilla.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really quick, and you can let me know if you can answer this now or later. But if I like what you said to this young lady about establishing your, domain in WordPress. So what if you're not tied to a specific issue? I am not tied to a specific issue, but how do I establish, what you mentioned about a domain and the WordPress?
Sure. So I don't want, again, this goes back to the framework for me. So while you may not be tied to a specific issue, I'm sure that you have specific interests and specific ideas about the kind of things that you're trying to sort of be invested in. So like, well, let me start again. Let me start in a different way. What is your intention with your social media? What are you trying to gain? What is your life narrative right now? Like, where are you trying to go?
I guess the word that's most salient is like networker. So I know maybe a little to a lot about different things, and I connect people to avenues. I have my personal views on things, but I don't necessarily want to share them, not for any particular reason, but I just don't think it's important or maybe not even appropriate, but I disseminate a lot of different issues. It could be about education.
Let me hold you up there and try and rephrase this question a little bit. So, in your bigger, in the bigger life narrative of like the up narrative, like how do you see your life, and what do you want to do with your life, like in the next, say, like what would you ideally like to be doing in 10 years from now? Just give me a broad idea. I mean,
I'm graduating in like 3 weeks, so I'm like trying to get a job right now. That's like all I can think about. In 10 years.
So what are you getting your degree in?
Social administration and public policy.
Okay, so would you be interested in getting a job somewhat related to that?
Absolutely.
But would you be willing to take a job just because it's a job and you need a job?
That is what they're telling me.
Right. Okay. So no, I think this is really important. And it goes back to what I was saying here. Like, your life path isn't just gonna go like this. You're gonna go, you know what I'm saying? So just like, that's okay, So I mean, I think at this point, this is probably more of a career services question, specifically about like finding job opportunities. But what I would say about social media is just maybe take an hour and say, okay, in this 10 minutes, I'm going to think about sort of what my North Star is. If you don't have one, that's okay. But just think about generally what your North Star is. What do I care about? What are the things that interest me? And then who are the institutions that do that sort of work? And then let me see if they have any job openings. Because it might not be the job that you want in that institution, but even if you're like for example, I know people like I know someone who loves guitars and loves photography. He started at Taylor Guitars working as a janitor, but he was working at Taylor Guitars, like one of the biggest acoustic guitar manufacturers in the United States, and then his foot was in the door, even though he wasn't doing the job he wanted to do, but he was at the place he wanted to be. So I'm sure there are institutions that you would be interested in working at, and even though it might not be the specific job that you're interested in, being at an institution that's a good institution, if you work hard and people see that you're genuinely interested in whatever you're doing, that will yield results. It's a truism, but I think it's worth saying. If you are invested and interested in, if your life narrative and your mission align with a company's life narrative, a company's narrative and their mission, that will be a good fit, even if the specific position within the job that even though your specific job position isn't what exactly you want it to be, it'll work out.
I guess I was thinking we can talk more later just about, but how do you establish a web presence when you are not pro this or pro that?
Yeah, well, I don't think you need to necessarily take a stance on issues. I would just say maybe if you were to do a website, I think getting a website with just your name is great, because then it doesn't say anything about what you do, and what you do can change, and then you don't need to get a new website. But, okay, so your website, in your About section, you can say you're a recent graduate from the University of Chicago, SSA, and while you're at SSA, you studied these things, and these were the things that interested you. And from there, you can start to build out. And this is what I'm saying about being reflective. Take an hour and just think about, what are the things I'm interested in? What are the institutions that are doing those things, and then take it from there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Did you have? No? Okay. Go for it.
Okay, so I totally believe you in the social media thing for getting a job. I'm an undergrad, just to preface this. But with the, I use Twitter and Facebook to push my personal brand and narrative pretty hard after multiple of these sessions over the last year or whatever. But with the website thing, how often do you think it would be the case that I apply for a job being an undergrad and people see, kevinhussenthing.com and think, oh, well, this kid thinks he's .com important, and it's do you know what I'm saying?
I don't think that should be a concern.
Really?
Mostly because in this day and age, having a website to me indicates that you are dedicated enough to. It basically just indicates that you're trying to be a professional. Being .com important maybe 15 years ago, sure, but today I don't know. It's not about having the website, it's about what you say in that website. If you act like you're .com important on your website, I think that's a bad idea. But I think if you're humble and you're authentic about who you are and what you're trying to do and why you have this website, I don't think that's a problem. I'll just use myself as an example. My name, it's a photo website. I do photography, so when people come to my website, I hope that they see that I do photography, and if they see the work that they like, they might give me a call. This really just hit me. If you decide to get a website or a blog, please tell people where you are in America or the world, because if people are gonna Google, if people Google you and you're not in the place where they're, anyway, just tell people where you are, and also don't make it that hard to email you or get in touch with you. I'm not saying phone number necessarily, although in my business phone number is totally acceptable to put on the internet, but I would say that be reachable and have people know where you are in the world. Okay. Other questions? Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Is that
totally.
fair?
Yeah.
It's about being authentic. I mean, that's, again, yeah, go for it.
First of all, I'm sorry I'm late, and I'm sorry if I've missed the information that I'm asking for.
No worries.
But,
I'll send out a link to the presentation so you can look at it again.
Okay, great. Well, I was wondering where a website falls in the spectrum from LinkedIn to like a personal blog, and if you do have both a LinkedIn and a personal blog, is a website still useful?
Well, okay, so I think LinkedIn is a good tool. It's sort of like the Facebook of professionals, right? Like if you met somebody, you can connect with them on LinkedIn. But I'm not a huge fan of LinkedIn because there's not that much community and interaction going on once you like connect with somebody. You know, like how many times have you been on LinkedIn other than to accept connections? Anyone? Like,
But I'm searching for a job.
okay, but okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess job searching does happen on LinkedIn, but I'm just like, I just don't think that it's the community that it doesn't engender community very well. So I would say that on that spectrum, I'm not a huge fan of it as opposed to having a website. I think on your website you could say, you know, let's connect on LinkedIn, you know, but I would say that having a website, I'm not saying you have to have one, but I'm saying it's probably a good idea too because it's a chance for you to tell potential employers what your life narrative is as you want it to be. You know, and I'm not saying that you should lie. I'm not saying that you should deceive, but I'm saying that it's about a narrative. That up clip, they didn't show when the guy walked off the thing, they didn't show him in the hospital. They didn't show anything. They showed two scenes. They showed him driving to the hospital and they showed him in the bed with his cast. You don't need everything in between to know what happened, right? You weren't here for that. But the kid in Up, he walked off the second floor and he hurt himself. The next scene you see him driving in an ambulance, and then the next scene you see him in bed with a cast. You don't need to know. I guess what I'm trying to draw is it's about creating a narrative. It's about selectively showing and not showing things, but also being true to what things that you're showing.
Okay. The other part of my question was how personal do you think a website should be, and how much personal interest / hobbies?
How many personal interests /
hobbies do you think?
I mean, I think that your website should reflect your goals in having a website. So if you're trying to get a job with your website, you know, probably not so much. I mean, but I think it's important to like show people who you are as a person, not just as this like, you know, applicant number 100 or 102, you know. So I mean, I think a website's a really great way to sort of distinguish yourself in the sense that people can get to know you a little bit, you know. I mean, if you like cats, you put I like cats. Like, here's my cat, you know. You know, there was this girl who just got an internship at Lego because she like built a Lego version of herself and like put her. I swear to God, this is true. Like, yeah. So I mean, I just think be creative, but be who you are. I don't know. I think being authentic is really important. Any other student questions, or we'll go to you?
Well, I was just asking, I'm sort of thinking on behalf of the students. If you're looking for a job and you might have a resume, how does your resume relate to your website? How do you use it differently, or Twitter? How do you work your resume into this thing? It seemed like what you're talking about is just a resource, just a tool for networking in a sense, a pretty powerful tool. But it does seem like more general. So the question is, how does the resume and what you do with these other things relate to your overall job search?
Yeah, so I on my about, everyone should have an about page, right? So on your website. For some it might be your homepage, for others it may not. But it's not mine. But I'm just saying, if you don't have a lot of content, your about page could be your homepage. But I would say, you know, everyone has Google Docs, right? Or Google Drive, whatever they call it. But you upload a PDF of your resume, and then you have a little hyperlink that says My Resume, and you click on it, and it's there. You could do it in a text form too. I mean, I just think it's nice to have the downloadable PDF because people can download your PDF and print it out, you know, as opposed to printing out a website. So I would say integrating your resume into your About page on your website. And your website is going to be hyperlinked in your Twitter profile and all your other social media profiles. So the way that it would work, ideally, is social media profile, someone clicks on your website in that social media profile, and then someone clicks on your resume. Other questions? Okay. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
So in addition to looking for a job, I'm also doing social media for an organization. And it tends to have, it caters towards folks who are not as social media savvy.
Right.
So do you recommend maybe Facebook as, like, emphasizing Facebook as kind of the widest reach, or how do you target demographics who are not on Twitter? Like, what is the best medium?
Well, so I think that you have to go where your audience is, right? So if your audience is on Facebook, then you should be on Facebook. I think that it's.
Would you say that Facebook still has the broadest reach? Or?
Well, it doesn't matter what has the broadest reach. If your audience is on Facebook, it doesn't matter if it's broad or not. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Because it's at the end of the day, if you're trying to reach a certain audience and if here's you and here's your audience, you need to be here, right? Wherever that audience is, it doesn't matter what the platform is. So what I'm saying is, and this isn't. You can tweet and post the same thing if it's under 140 characters. So it's not like you have to, reinvent the wheel every time you post something. Just make sure it's under 140 characters, and then you put it on both Facebook and Twitter. It's nice to have some flexibility on status updates, but I think studies bear out that the longer a status update is, the less engaged people are with it. And I'll talk more about that in the visuals one.